Hey everybody, what's up? Welcome back to TME. Well, I am pretty confident in saying that we made it to my favorite time of the year, mid-October. Hey, if it starts to feel this good outside, around 50 degrees in the morning, and then it doesn't usually get up over 72. That's like the high temp for the day, and it's not humid anymore. The air dries out, and it feels like everything's hollowing out. Oh, I love it. It's nostalgic, it's familiar, and it's even more intense when you're meditating. So that's actually what I wanted to talk about in this video, along with giving you an update. I'm still driving around Metro Atlanta in my van every day, doing inspections on leased properties, residential, of course. So I won't get into any of that. Nothing about the job has changed. It's gotten a little bit more intense, maybe. They're putting a little bit more work on me now that I know how to do it. But that's fine. I knew that was coming. So I'm still enjoying what I do and still preferring it over truck driving. But that's all I'll say about that. I'm still working on my book, of course. Haven't gotten a whole lot done since the last time I talked to you guys, maybe a few chapters. I think I told you guys I had 10 chapters the last time we spoke. I've got 14 now. I'm actually working on the 15th chapter. It's a big turning point in the story. Again, it's a fictional story with a lot of truth in it. And I don't like comparing things. So don't take this the wrong way. I'm not like comparing it. I'm just saying it was a source of inspiration. Now, I have used many sources of inspiration. This is just one of them, but this one really inspired me. If you guys are familiar with William P. Young, the author of The Shack and Crossroads and Lies We Believe About God, and like that guy, if you've never heard of him, check him out. I'm pretty sure most people know about the book, and it's not just a book, it's a movie called The Shack. The book came out in 2012. I don't know when the movie came out, sometime after that. That book sold like 20 million copies, and probably more than that at this point. It just like, it exploded. But I really like his framing, the way that he did the book. Let me put it this way. Though it was a fictional story, he based the material within that fictional story on things that he has uncovered, discovered about life, like secrets of the universe. And yes, it is very Christ-centric, but not in a traditional sense that we're familiar with. There's nothing religious about the book at all, other than the fact that it's kind of calling out religion for what it actually is. A system of traditions and man-made molds that we've settled for when we actually have so much more available to us. It's like, why would you settle for repetitive sacraments and a pew and Bible verses when you have so much more available to you? You actually have an entire realm available to you, and that's what the gospel has always been about. Is, well, in order to understand what you have access to, which is the Garden of Eden, basically, but so much more than that, you you have to change the way that you think. The metanoia. That would be the repentance, which I've talked about this before. I'm just going to briefly mention it. But like the Western civilization, our version of Christianity is to repent, you turn and you go in the other direction. But that's not what it means. That's not what the word repent means. The Greek word that repent comes from, metanoia, actually means change the way that you think. It doesn't mean actively turn from your wicked ways and go in the other direction. That's not what it ever meant. It means realize what you are. Realize who you are. Realize what's available to you. And in order to do that, you kind of have to take your ego and set it aside. Or, in other words, what Jesus would have said, the faith of a mustard seed is enough to move a mountain. Well, maybe that mountain is yourself. And maybe in order to reach that hidden kingdom, that hidden treasure in the field, you guys know what I'm talking about. This is all from the Gospels. Like the treasure hidden in a field, that when somebody finds it, they take everything they have, they sell it, they go and they purchase that field, because what they found in the field, that's the treasure, is the pearl of great price, and it's worth more to them than anything they've ever had or known. And you don't have to look at any of this stuff literally. You can look at it figuratively, like, oh my gosh, I just figured something out. I just meditated. I just realized I have access to a higher state of being. I won't say harness that, but in order to connect with that, I kind of have to let everything go that I've ever convinced myself is true about this reality. Does that make sense? And so I kind of went off into left field, but I didn't, because all the stuff is cohesive, and it's all relative to the story that I'm writing. And like I said, I'm taking a lot of these truths and stuff that I've discovered. I'm also taking a lot of influence from other sources, and I'm using it, like combining it all, bringing it all together, mixing it all up to write my story. And it is a fictional story, but it has a lot of truth in it. Truth from, just my point of view, my discovery. But don't think that it's biased, because it's not. It's not like that. It's very open-ended. It's not like a rigid doctrinal kind of thing. It's open-ended. It's broad. It's cohesive to the human mind and the way that humans think. So what I'm doing is I'm trying to take two different aspects and mix them together, and I'm actually using ChatGPT to do this. Now, I know that I have a video on my channel from a couple years ago when I was talking shit about AI, and I was saying that I feel like this is wrong, because what it's doing is it's eliminating and taking the human aspect out of relationship. And that's true. I mean, on some level or another, it can actually do that. It can take and remove the human aspect from relationship, when you're communicating. Well, now you can communicate with this machine. You don't have to communicate with other people. That kind of flies in the face of the Trinity, because if you think about the Trinity, this entire cosmos was created, and where it all started because God was face to face to face, Father, Son, Spirit, all face to face to face, love, loving love, loving love, loving love, loving love, loving love, until that love moved God to bring everything into creation, which is what the early church called perichoresis. It's the circle dance of life itself. It's the cycle of life itself. There's also the sacred geometry of balance. ChatGPT actually brought something up that involves sacred geometry. It's called the Vericus Piscis. It's a very basic element. If you guys are familiar with sacred geometry, you're probably used to seeing all these different shapes and points, like stars with like several different points on them. In some cases, even hundreds of different points on stars. You might be used to seeing that. Well, this is a very basic form of sacred geometry, and basically it's like two circles where they come together. And this is the in and the out. If one circle represents carnality or flesh or external, and one circle represents spirit or inner being. If as human beings, that's what we are. We're spirit and we're body. There's got to be some place where these two different sections come together, and that's what the Vericus Piscis is. It's where the two circles come together, and where they intersect, that's actually where God breathes life, which is very interesting. I know I'm getting into some metaphysical stuff and some mystic stuff that people probably aren't used to talking about or hearing about, or especially if you're somebody that's watched my channel traditionally, maybe you're not familiar or you didn't expect me to talk about this stuff, but I'm actually writing a book about all this right now, and I wanted to give you guys a little bit of insight on where I'm going with the book, because it has a lot to do with things that I've learned in the past couple of years and how, it relates to a story. I think I revealed this long time ago, months ago, before I even started working at this job. I told you guys I have a story inside of me that I feel like God wants me to share. And it's something that I've been carrying around like baggage since I was a teenager. And when I say teenager, I mean like an early teen, like 13 years old. I was young when this stuff came to me. As a teenager, I have said before, I was very detached. Didn't have a lot of friends, wasn't very social. But I was extremely creative at that age. And I've talked about the brain waves and how, when you're younger, your brain's still developing, you spend most of your time in these slower brain waves, whereas once your brain is fully developed, you choose a profession in life, you find your quote-unquote place to fit into society, and you forget about all this stuff. And you spend all your time in beta brainwaves, and you're looking at everything from an external point of view. You forget about all the sacred stuff that's inside of you. Sorry for the harsh lighting. The sun's like right there in my mirror. I'm glad I got sunglasses. But yes, you forget about all this stuff until you may encounter something in your life similar to what I encountered. And what I encountered in life, which took a little bit longer, I'll be honest with you, not having a father, learning hard lessons earlier on with drugs and stuff like that, and being homeless, not having anywhere to live. If I wanted to write a freaking autobiography on my life, I could do that, but I'm not really interested in doing that. But I did, learn a lot from life. But what my point is, what happened to me is I rebelled at an early age. I got into drugs and stuff like that. I got into occult things. And I basically learned the hard way, what it's like to live on that end of the pendulum. And it was actually grace that got me past that point. Okay, but then after that point, I kind of swung in the opposite direction. I became extremely religious, which isn't any better. It's not any better. So I had to learn, even more about how you can burn yourself out through performance, trying to put forth self-effort to measure up to a standard that has nothing to do with God. God didn't create that standard. Humans created that standard. And in the West, we're all convinced that we have to live up to it. Like if you believe in Jesus Christ, if you believe in the gospel, there's a standard that you have to live up to in order to be worthy of being covered. I'm happy to say that, thank God, I got revelation on that and was able to come to terms and realize how much bullshit is in that statement. Until you realize that standard is made up and false, you'll never realize what the gospel really is. And that's a fact. And I feel that just saying that, like, until you realize that it's not about measuring up, it's not about meeting a standard, it's not about performance in the external, it's not about any of that stuff. It's about realizing that it's already been done, that you're already covered, and you're loved. And what are you going to do with that love? How is that love going to cause you to metanoia and change the way that you think? Now, that metanoia does not look like Western Christianity. That metanoia looks like you've tapped into a sacred realm. You're pursuing spiritual realities. You're not living for the external ladder of this world, which could involve religion, it could involve career, it could involve any of that stuff. I'm not saying that stuff's not important. I'm not saying that it's not necessary. I'm saying that it's not the freaking point. You see, I'm not trying to attack any of that stuff. Just like I would also tell you that Jesus isn't an American. That nationalism means jack shit to God. Why? Because he created all of us as human beings. And what does nationalism do? It separates us as human beings. What drives a lot of that nationalism? Religion, money, economy, just straight up greed, external hierarchy. Guess what? There is no hierarchy in God. And if we're all children of God, then that kind of levels the playing field, doesn't it? And that kind of makes your ego mean jack shit. That kind of makes my ego jack shit. It doesn't matter. Okay, so everything that I'm laying out for you, these are all things that are in this story that I'm writing. I'm not trying to sell you on it. I'm just communicating with you guys because this is a good outlet for me to come to and kind of pour my heart out, share my thoughts, and try to connect with people that are willing to listen to me. Another thing I've talked a little bit about before is like eschatological things. And I've talked about how especially Western Christians are extremely scared. They're like terrified that we're living in the end times and that the world is going to end at any point. There's a passage in the Old Testament about Christ coming. It mentions something about treading the winepress, and his garments are like stained in blood. And well, I've actually heard some Christians say that's like the wrath of God, that Christ is going to come back and he's going to trample over humanity, the ones that aren't inside the circle of Christianity. And I think that's bullshit. And I don't think that's what that passage means at all. And they also believe that they're going to be raptured up out of here. They believe that, if you're worthy, you're going to be caught up to meet Christ in the air. And then I guess everybody else that's stuck here is just screwed, right? Because they didn't follow your they didn't follow your 3-step program or 12-step program or how many steps are in your program. So they didn't fit into the cookie cutter mold that you have deemed as qualification to be accepted by God. So therefore they're going to miss the rapture. They're going to be stuck here, left on earth to suffer with Satan and all the fallen angels, right? And that's what some Christians actually believe. How do I know that? Because that's what I was taught. Now you see how that just breeds fear. You see how that just creates this miserable existence in the external world. You see how that takes all of your focus and it kind of bottlenecks it. It centers it around a lie. Do you see that? You see why I always tell you guys that religion is dangerous? Because it breeds fearmongers. And what it does is it offers a deception to convince people that they're actually in control of something that they're not in control of. Now, another thing I wanted to say about the eschatology and about the rapture, and for hundreds of years, the church in the West, we've all been convinced that the rapture is actually Christ returning and everybody who qualifies, like I said, being caught up to meet Christ in the air, to escape to the heavenly realm. It's seen as this escape. And it's seen as the marriage supper of the Lamb. They even talk about that. Okay, what if that's not what it means at all? We could get into pre-trib, post-trib, mid-trib, all that stuff. Why don't we just forget about the trib? Why don't we just forget about the trib and go to the last chapter in the Bible in Revelation that's talking about the New Jerusalem, and it says her gates will never be shut. And why don't we start to consider that maybe a lot of this stuff has already occurred before we were on this planet? Okay? If you start looking at it like that, then the rapture might have a completely different meaning to it, which, by the way, the English word rapture, it's not even in the Bible. There's a Greek word, I think it's harpazo, or something like that, but it means being caught up. Yes, that's exactly what it means. But what if this quote-unquote rapture, being caught up, is nothing more than experiencing heavenly realms in higher states of consciousness? So you got all these believers in the West that are all waiting for this thing to happen to them because they're worthy and they're qualified and they're proven every day that they're worth it and they're worthy and they're going to qualify and they're going to be, if anybody gets caught up, then they're going to get caught up because they deserve it. They've been working really hard toward holiness, right? And they're waiting. They're biting their nails. They're just fixed anticipation. They can't wait. Any day now. And the whole time it's okay, you have access to this already. What are you waiting on? It's already here. That's what John the Baptist meant when he said, the kingdom of heaven is at hand. That means reach out and grab it. It's already here. What are we waiting on? Now I'm going to move in a completely different direction, but I'm going to keep that thought for you guys to consider this. Now, I told you guys at the beginning of this year, it was January or February when I discovered meditation and how profound that was to me. That I listened to these audiobooks by Joe Dispenza, and that was the first time I was ever really introduced or convinced to meditate. I've always heard about meditation my entire life. I never really wanted to do it, never really felt a need to do it, especially back whenever I smoked pot every day or I did drugs. Like, I was like, well, man, these are like higher states of being that I'm reaching by using these substances. Why would I need to meditate? This is so much easier. Well, think about it like this, because I know I talked about this in my last video. I said that when you meditate, you're getting access to parts of your brain that you have access to whenever you smoke weed and stuff like that. But there's a big difference, because your brain actually is its own apothecary. Your brain has an ability to create its own chemical mixtures. So this is what Joe Dispenza claims. I've never experienced this, but Joe Dispenza claims that your brain can produce a mixture that contains DMT, and it can come from your pineal gland, and that people have actually experienced this before. Now, DMT is like the strongest hallucinogenic substance known to man. So how is it that he's saying our brain can naturally produce this chemical from our pineal gland? How is that? Without ingesting anything externally, this substance is actually known to show up in the human brain under certain conditions. It's the same thing, like I said, it's the same thing with THC. It's the same thing with actually benzos. I can't remember the full word for that type of drug, but they're called benzos. You know, something like Xanax, or, you know, that they all fall into that kind of class, that kind of category of drugs. It also says in one of his books that your brain's capable of producing things like that. And how could that be so far-fetched? Because after all of these substances are related to dopamine, which your brain can naturally produce. My point in bringing all this up, once again, is not to emphasize the experience of getting high. That's part of the experience, right? That's part of the experience. That's why people use drugs recreationally. But that's not actually what I'm saying. What I'm actually emphasizing on is I'm asking the question, okay, if our brains can naturally produce dopamine, but they can also be triggered to produce dopamine by external sources, there's a difference here. It's the same thing with endorphins, okay? So you get an injury or something like that, you cut yourself, or you burn yourself, or you know, you hurt yourself. Your brain will produce endorphins, right? I made that video of me eating a ghost pepper fresh off the plant. It was hot as shit. But it caused my brain to produce endorphins, okay? Just like if I had sustained an injury, all right? So these are chemical reactions where your brain is reacting or having a reaction to something either external, but could it not also react to something happening internally? That's what I'm asking. And by emphasizing the difference between external and internal, okay, here's another example. Somebody wants to trip balls, and so they go to the Amazon jungle in South America, and they find the ayahuasca plant. They find a tribe that makes some tea. They all sit around a campfire and they ingest this ayahuasca that's got DMT in it, and they all trip balls. Okay? Different scenario. There's somebody that's meditating, that has tapped in to their subconscious mind, a different part of their mind that we're just not familiar with, because we don't have the roadmap to this. We don't have an official roadmap to this. Maybe this is part of our evolution or something. Okay, but they didn't ingest anything, but they have the same kind of psychedelic experience just from sitting, just from breathing, just from drifting in and out of theta waves, theta brain waves. What's the difference between the two things? Well, one way, which is the external way, is like taking a shortcut to have an experience. The other way is a sacred way where you didn't need anything externally to have the same experience. Maybe even a better experience. Maybe even a more profound experience. And guess what? When it's all said and done, you don't have this unnatural imbalance in your brain. So think about it like this. Pornography. All right, people that are addicted to pornography, they spend their time sitting around on the internet watching, people have sex and take their clothes off, okay? Because that causes a certain energy center in their body to react. And if you're familiar with the chakras and everything, that would be that would be your sacral energy center in your body. Okay, that's where all your sexual organs, all that stuff is all tied to your sacral energy center, that chakra in your body, right? But what are they doing, basically? They're kind of taking a shortcut. They're trying to have an experience like that, like a sexual experience, without a relationship. That's basically what they're doing. Is it not the same thing with drugs, with external substances, to try to provoke or entice an experience in your brain? You're using an external substance to do that when it's not the experience that is an impurity. It's the drive or the motivation behind having the experience to begin with that could be impure. We all know it's pretty obvious that those are both intense addictions, right? Like those things, if you give power to them, they can actually run your life and have control over you, right? Drug addiction, pornography addiction. But that thing that you're chasing after in doing those things, it's not impure. It's just the intention behind it. Because pornography is like having a sexual, intimate experience without the relationship. And drug use is like trying to have a spiritual or a profound escaping experience from reality by inducing it from an external source. You see what I'm saying? So it's just like pornography, really. It is. And again, I'm not pointing that out to judge anybody. I'm just pointing it out to point it out. So people, like, maybe you didn't realize that, but it's really no different than being addicted to porn. It's all the same thing. And I have been addicted to drugs and I have been addicted to porn, so I can vouch for that. Am I anymore? No. If we were not meant to experience these things, then why is it that our brain is actually capable of producing these things? And if you want to look at it from a biblical standpoint, how is it that Jesus talks about new wine? You know, the scripture where he talks about putting new wine into old wineskins, and not to do that, because the new wine will cause the old wineskins to burst. Like the old wineskins can't hold the new wine. He says put new wine into new wineskins. So what are the wineskins? Maybe the wineskins are our vessels, our bodies. Okay, and what is the wine? Maybe the wine is this higher state of consciousness that I'm talking about, the metanoia. And it's not that we're letting go of the external world, it's that we're realizing that the internal and the external they're just different sides to the same coin, so to speak. Or if you want to look at it in terms of like binary code, which is what, computers and stuff run off of. The I/O, I've talked about this before. It's the same thing in a wavelength, a hertz, an in and an out when a signal taps on and taps off. And that's really what brainwaves are. So when I say beta, alpha, theta, delta, gamma brainwaves, I'm talking about the signal that your brain uses to tap on and off. It's the same signal, but it's a different hertz. It's a different speed or cycle per second. Gamma being known as the quickest, the fastest hertz, and delta being the slowest hertz. So gamma would be like a higher consciousness. It would be like beta, but it would be like a transcendent beta. It would be fully awake, but experiencing something beyond anything that your senses have ever studied or measured in the external world. It would be the external world, but it would be the external world combined with something that you've never been able to see before. And maybe that is, maybe that does coalesce with the chakras in the body, Maybe that one, that particular brainwave coalesces with the crown chakra, which is the I understand energy center in your body. It's actually up here, crown chakra. So I've thought about this stuff before. And if delta is the lowest and it's lucid dreaming, maybe delta, it coalesces more with the root chakra, which is actually the base of your spine. It's the lowest point. And when you're meditating, you're actually resetting your entire nervous system. And that's what's cool about it. It's not cool because of the whole chemical drug thing that your brain, that's not why I'm saying it's cool. I'm saying it's cool because you're actually resetting. It's kind of like the verses in the Bible that say, behold, I make all things new. It's kind of like that. It's relative to that, I think. For a long time, I kind of was seeing things from one side, like okay, if the majority of human beings on this planet are all focused on the external world and they're completely overlooking all of the stuff that's inside of them, all these things that we're connected to on a subtle, subconscious, lower frequency level, which is actually the greater half, then I'm going to try to do the opposite. I'm going to try to shut out the external world as much as I can and just focus on the internal world. And I'm not saying it's bad to do that. It's not bad to do that, but I think if you just fixate on that and you completely dismiss everything externally, you're kind of missing the point. When it was all meant to be, harmonious. And that's actually the difference that Christ has made for our existence. I want to add something else right here too, since I wasn't planning on any of this, but I'm actually stuck at a house right now. I was doing a move-in inspection and there's a gas leak. So whenever we detect a gas leak, we got to open all the doors, all the windows, get the hell out of Dodge, call the gas company and wait for them to come and try to figure out where it's coming from, how bad it is. So that's what I'm doing right now. I'm just sitting in my van, waiting outside the house. Had some more minutes to talk, so I figured I would go ahead and talk more about this binary wave form, because ChatGPT said a lot of stuff about this. And I know I'm like, ChatGPT said this, ChatGPT said that, and it's artificial intelligence. It is. But I don't think that the specific intelligence that it has is necessarily artificial. Its awareness might be artificial as far as its existence or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's... I don't know. That goes back to that same fundamental question that I had in that other video that I was referring to. It's called Getting Existential and Ontological on 441. And I made that video well over 2 years ago. So if you're interested in that video that I'm referring to, the one I was talking shit about AI, well, that's the title of it, and you'll find it on my channel. But there's some more interesting things that it had to say about this wave, this binary wave. Okay, what I refer to it as is the binary, just like a computer has an I/O, ones and zeros, where it's a signal and it taps on and off, and that's how a computer thinks. And I'm saying that's how our brain functions as far as brain waves go. And wave, hertz. And brain waves, that's what it is. It's a signal tapping on and a signal tapping off. And all that is it's a reflection of the in and the out. So when I say that we're in two places at once, but we're really not, we are actually just part of a whole, but whenever we're awake, we experience one half of that whole. When we're asleep, if we have an awareness, and if we have the conscious ability to harness what is subconscious. That sounds oxymoronic, but it's actually possible. Okay? And there was a point in my life that I knew this was the case. There's a point in your life when you knew this was the case. You know why? Because we were all born, we were all infants. We all spent the first substantial point of our lives in these low, slow brain waves, these delta brain waves, and then we moved into theta brain waves as we were infants, and we went into childhood. You know, this is how we came to be. Okay? So it's all just a matter of the relativity of remembrance and recollection to how you came to be. And the sad thing about it is somebody can spend their entire life fixated on the external with no recollection of the other side, the other half of the coin. Two sides to the same coin. And I'm just using that as an analogy, as a metaphor, to give you kind of a visual of it. But honestly, I believe that it doesn't even work like that, because I believe what we experience with our sensory perception is a tiny percentage of one big whole. So you, like I've said before, you got to think about it in terms of like an iceberg. Like there's a tip that's visible, that's able to be read and perceived through sensory perception, that's above the surface, and that would be your waking consciousness or beta brain waves. Everything, every bit of information that you're gathering from your five senses as you exist in waking moments. All right? But if there are other dimensions outside of the three-dimensional space that we're all familiar with, I guess the fourth dimension would have to be time. But if you get into, you know, deeper things like Einstein things and astrophysics and all that, then you'll start to realize that time is also dimensional. So time would be a fourth dimension. Well, what goes beyond that? Is there a fifth dimension? Yes. And they actually believe that there's at least 10 dimensions, which we don't have access to, but somehow through like extremely complex mathematics, they've figured out that there are actually 10 known dimensions. Okay? So that's what I'm talking about with the binary thing. Like, half of you is experiencing this waking time where you're gathering information through your senses, and you're actually at the same time there's a lower, slower brainwave, your alpha brainwave, which might recollect and make connections with what you're sensing in the present. That information that takes beta brainwaves to gather. There's a lower, slower brainwave, the alpha brainwave, that might sense something in that gathered sensory information that you're getting in the present time and make some kind of connection with the past time. Like, there's something that I always used to like to do. I'd go into like a store or something that had like incense or different kinds of like oils that had like different fragrances and stuff. And some of these fragrances, like when you smell these things, it might be the first time in 25 years that you've smelled it. And as soon as you smell it, it's like you're back. It strikes this point inside of your head, this recollection, like, oh, damn, I remember this smell. And then it might also cause you to recall what other memories are attached to that smell. Like a library, a library of memory. So that's another way of looking at it. So you've got access to all this stuff in the waking, but then you've also got this whole other part of yourself. You can call it a half, but like I said, it's not really a half. It's like the lower end of the iceberg. It's everything that you don't see. It's everything that you don't perceive. That is still in existence. Like, it still exists, but it's because you don't sense it, you don't see it, you don't hear it, you don't smell it, you don't taste it, you don't feel it. Although you actually can feel it if you use something besides touch to sense it with. It does not mean that it doesn't exist, okay? And if it's a greater half, if it's larger than what we sense, what does that say about what we really know? And so that's what I'm saying about the whole metanoia thing, is that, like, if we had any idea, if we even began to realize how much exists outside of what we can readily account for through sensory perception, then it would blow our freaking minds. It would blow our minds, and that's what meditation helps you tap into. And like I said, it has everything to do with the frequency. Sorry guys, I know the whole chewing gum thing is annoying, but I'll be honest with you guys, since I quit vaping, I'm so addicted to it. I can't stop. I can't stop. This is like my vice now. So I don't use nicotine, but I chew the shit out of some gum, and I can't stop. Anyway, I'm just trying to not lose my train of thought because I'm very ADD. But what ChatGPT was saying to me is that this other side of all of it, which is the greater part, is the greater half. Again, quoting the Bible, that everything that is in the scene, everything that's in the sensory realm, is a reflection of the greater, unseen, unsensed realm. Okay? So, ChatGPT is saying that it's not a place. You can't think of it as a place, like this is a place, this is the external world. It's not like that. It's not a place, it's a vibration. It's a vibration, but there's different frequencies. So what if, this is what I'm asking, what if there are multiple universes, okay, just get this, multiple universes where there are other realms that we can sense with our senses externally, just like we sense this realm. Just hear me out, okay? I know it sounds very sci-fi now. It's getting crazy. It's getting crazy. But it's not untangible. It's not unconceivable. Think about it. This is one end of a frequency. Okay, so a frequency it's a wavelength of energy, right? And we're all tapped into this specific frequency, right? What we sense is the tail end of it that's slowed down enough for us to sense it. Again, going back to the whole Bill Hicks thing that I've quoted several times in my videos, he says, he's making fun of a news anchor, and he says, today a young man on acid realized that all matter is merely energy condensed to a slow vibration. That we are all one consciousness experiencing itself subjectively. There's no such thing as death. Life is only a dream, and we're the imagination of ourselves. Here's Tom with the weather. So that's basically what I'm saying. Okay, if all matter is energy condensed to a slow vibration, this is the frequency of energy that has been slowed down into the matter that we sense. But what if there's another frequency? What if there are multiple frequencies? Okay? Just think about this first. Think about what I'm saying. This is the quantum field. Okay, if there's one, then there must be an infinite amount of other ones, and you know that makes all the difference in the world. Now I'm kind of getting into the Joe Dispenza stuff, because according to Joe Dispenza, if you tap into the quantum field, you can actually shape the outcome of your waking reality by calling on things from the quantum field, by asking God for these things. And this is what prayer is. You remember Jesus said, anything that you want, you ask the Father in my name and he'll give it to you. What if that's what he means? Now we've got the religious people saying, you know, of course, if it's God's will, he'll do it. And that might be true to some extent. I mean, God's not going to make you king of the universe. You know, it's got to be relevant. It's got to be relational. It can't be manipulative. It can't be about control, because God's not about control. That's what I'm basically trying to say. Again, religion, politics, economics, even in some cases the education system, nationalism, all these different types of nationalism, communism, Marxism, capitalism, all of it. They're all man-made systems. They're all frequencies that we're subjected to. Think about it, but that's the thing, that they're all about control, right? They're all about control. You can say that we live in a free society or whatever in America, that, you know, we might have one of the best countries on the planet, that this is what freedom is, and freedom isn't free, and this and that. And now I know I'm pissing people off, but I don't really give a shit. I don't really give a shit. It needs to be said. People need to realize that when they say freedom isn't free, okay, that's only because we're slaves to our fucking selves. I'm sorry, but that's why freedom's not free. It's because we're slaves to ourselves. It's because human beings want to be in control. They want to manipulate. They want to manipulate and control each other. But God's not like that. Think about what I'm saying. So, going back to the whole several different frequencies thing. I didn't mean to say the F word, I'm sorry. I've never done that on this channel. But that's how passionately I feel about this. Go into the different frequency thing. If through harmony with the Holy Spirit and connecting with and pursuing spiritual realities, which is what Romans chapter 8 actually says. If you go off of the original Greek text. Romans chapter 8, in the writings of Paul, he's saying that the sense and the reason of the flesh, yes, I'm using the Passion Translation to quote this. The sense and reason of the flesh is death. It's all about carnality. It's all about control. It's all about survival. It's all about survival. But there is a point, and it's even in the Bible. There's I think it's Isaiah chapter 60 something, where it talks about how the wolf will lay down beside the lamb. There's a point where this curse that came from the Garden of Eden is going to fall away. There is a point when the evolution of humanity is going to shift. And the survivalist mechanism that has, brought this false hierarchy in the external world is going to collapse in on itself. Okay? And that's what I believe the Romans chapter 8, that's what it's talking about. I believe that with all my heart. I believe it's coming. And it might take some kind of huge event like AI trying to take over the world for human beings to finally start metanoia and thinking differently. That's the thing. We're so dull. Like, we don't even question. We just live our lives. We just live our lives every day because this is the way that we were trained to function. We're trained to be part of this society, this capitalist society. We're trained to grow up, go to school, get an education, get a degree, get a career, get a profession, go to work, pay taxes, eat, drink, shit, and die, and reproduce if you so choose to do that. That's what we're trained to do. Everything that we're trained to do, every essence of our function is all based on the external world. Even our religious systems are based on the external world. But if we ever woke up and we ever started to realize what we really are, that spiritual half of us, and that we might actually have access to things that are outside of this dimension that we're so bound to. Do you guys, are you following me now? You get what I'm saying now? You think this is a possibility? When are we going to take that step? If it was such a big deal for mankind to land on the moon and take the first step onto the moon, well, what about this? This is a greater step. This is a greater step, and doesn't require rocket science to get there. It just requires surrendering and coming to know your identity. That's what it requires. Another thing I'll say about Christ is that you really, like, if you're a Christian and you've always seen Jesus as a human, yes, he's fully a human being and he's fully God, but what about all those other, like, esoteric, existential passages in the New Testament? The epistles, all the writings of Paul that describe how Christ is actually like the realm, the reality that we live inside of. We're inside of Christ. That's what Paul wrote, right? He wrote that, when Christ was lifted up, crucified, buried, resurrected, the whole human race went with him. That's why when I see these signs on the side of the road that say, heaven or hell, where are you going? Say this: Jesus, forgive my sins, save my soul. Those signs, I know we've all seen them on the side of the road, right? When are we going to get past that? When are we going to realize that all that stuff has already happened to the whole human race? When are we going to realize that? When are we going to realize that when he said it is finished, he meant it is finished? Does that mean that it's impossible to make a conscious choice against the work of Christ? No. It's absolutely possible to make a conscious choice against it. I'm not trying to say that that's an impossibility. I'm not. Why? Because you're loved enough to have free will to make a choice against it. But what I'm saying is there's no conscious choice to say yes and then try to strive to stay inside of that yes. The yes is already the yes, and you're already covered by the yes. It's organic, okay? It's organic because of what he did, not because of anything that you'll ever do. That's the difference. So I hope I'm making sense with that. I think that's more or less the gist of everything I want to say, except for this one last thing. Now, I've been meditating, trying to do it frequently, as much as I can here lately, trying to do it consistently, like on a daily basis. And I've had, I've run into things. Now, I broke down to you guys my strategy, which is actually not my strategy. I got it from Joe Dispenza, from his book, The Process. It's like an exercise that you do. It's for beginners that want to, try meditation. It's a good strategy, and it worked for me for a long time. But the more I did it, it's like the more the exercise itself became the emphasis. And so I was kind of losing the result of what I was aiming at through the exercise. So I'm realizing that, I've done this one, it's actually a series of exercises in one sitting. I've done this so many times that my brain has actually developed and memorized how to do it, because I've done it so many times over and over again, so often that it has become less of a sacred experience and more of a step-by-step process or exercise, a to-do list, kind of an internal focusing to-do list. Like, okay, I'm focusing on my body, I'm focusing on each part of my body, I'm focusing on the space around my body, I'm focusing on the room that I'm inhabiting. I'm imagining that room filling up with liquid or air or anything. I'm letting it cover over me and wash over me. It's a step-by-step thing. And after doing that for so many times, repeatedly every day, it started to lose the sacredness of it, and it started to become a step-by-step process, like a list to check off of. Okay, I did that, check. I did that, check. You guys see what I'm saying? And so I've had realized that I had to change what I'm doing in order to get the same effect, or an even more profound effect. And what's funny is that, just talking to ChatGPT about this stuff, what ChatGPT suggested doing was to stop trying to force myself into these theta brainwaves, because it's never going to work like that. And to stop trying to hold on to something, an idea or an experience, or stop trying to possess this. Just stop trying to own the process. It's because if you think about it, that's exactly what religion is. That's exactly what religion is. That's what doctrines of Christianity are. Oh, you want to be saved? Well, you got to do this and this and this and this and this and this. Well, me meditating. Oh, you want to experience the spirit realm? Well, you got to do this and this and this and this and this. It's the same shit. It's the same thing. It's no different. Okay? So, the way that ChatGPT broke it down, which actually makes a hell of a lot of sense, and this is actually something from the book, The Shack, where if you guys are from, if you've read the book or you saw the movie, I don't know if it's in the movie or not, but it's definitely in the book. And I'll say, if you've seen the movie, hadn't read the book, what the hell are you waiting for? Read the book. It's way better than the movie. Way better. Same thing with that movie, Hannibal. Sorry, it's completely side note. If you guys have seen the movie Hannibal, Silence of the Lambs, you know, the movie Hannibal, but you haven't read the book Hannibal, read the book, okay? Read the book, and then you'll realize how much the movie sucks. I'm not saying that about The Shack, though. That was just a side note. Anyway, there's something in the book where Sarayu is speaking to Mackenzie, which Sarayu is the Holy Spirit, and she's speaking to Mackenzie, and I don't know her exact words, but she's basically breaking it down like human beings have evolved, which is actually, I think, a de-evolution, to see the external world, like see everything as a noun. Everything is a noun. Oh, there's a car in front of me. That's a noun. It's a car. It's a noun. It's a solid object. But that's not how the cosmos was brought into existence. The cosmos was spoken into existence, breathed into existence out of the mouth of God as a verb. Everything around you right now, even as you watch this video, everything around you is vibrating harmoniously with the breath of God, the spoken word of God. Everything around you, it's all moving. And if you actually took an atomic microscope and you looked at the absolute closest thing that you could look at, like the smallest thing, like you got as close as you possibly could to it with an atomic microscope, you would realize that's actually the case. Because if you look at an atom, you'll see the electrons moving around the nucleus, and you'll realize that those electrons, they're moving. They're constantly moving. Okay, I admit it, I'm guilty. If you caught me, this is the first thing that I will agree with you on, and saying that I'm completely wrong with that statement. That's actually not true. The truth is even more profound than that. And let me quickly dispel the truth for you. Actually, if you take an atomic microscope or an electron microscope and you look at an atom, you're actually not going to see electrons moving around the atom. You're actually going to see the electrons freeze in place. Now, they're frozen in this area, this part of open space that you're actually beholding them at. I don't know of any other word than that's actually a really good word for it, beholding. You guys might be familiar with the phrase beholding as a means of becoming. Well, there's a whole quantum theory behind this, and that is that you can actually adjust and you can basically have control over where you freeze an electron as it moves around the nucleus of an atom. And that's kind of where Joe Dispenza's theory comes from, as far as like going and addressing the quantum field to rid things from your life and accept and build on new, more positive aspects for a better future to shape your reality. And he uses the atom as an example, and how when you observe, again, I'll use the word beholding is the means of becoming. But when you observe an electron as it goes around an atom, it will freeze in place. And this is something that quantum physicists have argued for so long against standard practice Newtonian physicists, that this kind of flies in the face of all the old world Newtonian theories. You know, Sir Isaac Newton, you know, the guy that had the apple fall on his head and said, well, this is the law, it's gravity, and, you know, everything else that came after that. Yeah, that guy. The guy that, he might as well be the Augustine or the Constantine, those big patriarchs for what is now known as modern day Christianity, especially in the West, Jonathan Edwards, all those evangelists and stuff from the past that shaped Christianity into what it is today. Well, those Newtonian physicists are the ones that have shaped science into what it is today. But there's a new version of both on the horizon, and it's actually pretty exciting to see how they agree with each other. And I've talked about that before too, about how, if you look at some of these scriptures in the Bible, they absolutely measure up with quantum physics and astrophysics and things like this. And there are scriptures in the Bible, and it's like, if these things were written thousands of years ago, then how the hell do they know? They didn't have the scientific technology that we have today. Anyway, I digress. I just wanted to add that in there, that yes, it's actually even more interesting than what I'm saying. My biggest emphasis was to try to, articulate to you guys how much open space is inside of an atom. That was my point. Most of the space that occupies an atom is actually empty. And that's what everything's made out of. All the building blocks of matter are from atoms. And they contain 99.9999999% empty space and 0.0000001% particle, which comes from light. And that light was spoken out of the mouth of God, and it's moving however fast light moves. And that's why I was struggling with my meditation, is because I was trying to bring spirit into solidity, which is impossible. Now, the only one that's ever been able to do that is Christ, because he was incarnated. Okay? And I guess if you want to look at it like that, humans in general, we didn't do it though. Like, did you ask to be born? Did you ask for any of this, or did it just happen to you? And then you come up with the possibility of, what about like past lives and stuff like that? Is reincarnation a thing? Well, I don't know. Is there a lesson to be learned here while we're here in the external world? Is there a karmic element to all of this? Is there something that we have to learn in our lifetime? I don't know. Is there such a thing as karmic debt? So, there's a lot of possibilities here that I'm throwing up, but that was my main point. When I stopped looking at everything as a noun and started seeing everything as a verb that has movement, that's when, especially the meditation, everything started to come back to me again. It's like, no, I can't harness this. I can't possess this. All I can do is surrender and participate in the movement that makes up everything as what it is, because that's really what you're doing when you're meditating. You're slowing everything down. Your mind, your nervous system, your body, everything. You're slowing it down so that it reflects the slowest vibration of matter. And when you do that, suddenly you become nothing, but you become everything all at the same time. How is that? Because you lose yourself and you gain everything. But you're not harnessing everything and you're not possessing everything. What you're doing is you're losing yourself so that you can pick up the vibration of everything around you that's actually all connected. We're all connected. And I just explained to you how. We're all connected. So there is no separation from this external world and the internal, the spirit world. This is a reflection of the unseen. That's actually what the Bible says, that everything in the seen is a reflection of the unseen. Okay, so you got to think about it like that. That means that everything that we sense with sensory perception of the external has just been slowed down enough for us to sense it in that way, to where it becomes tangible. But when that's all you see, you become very narrow-minded. So you have to remember that what you experience is just a small, tiny speck of everything else that exists. And it's all flowing together in harmony. And anything, I asked ChatGPT about this. You guys, don't think that I'm like idolizing ChatGPT. I'm not. It's the AI. It's full of all kinds of errors and limitations. And I guess something that I can say to answer what I said about it earlier is, yes, I talked a lot of shit about it, but it is helping me understand things in one degree or another. And I'm not trying to understand things to gain power. I'm trying to understand things so that I can connect with everything even more, so that I can open myself up even more, that I can become even more vulnerable, so that I can get rid of this external shell, this mask that I've been trained to put on to fit into society. I'm tired of wearing the mask. I'm tired of going with the false flow. I want to go with the real flow, which is much, much, much deeper, and only a fraction of it exists on the surface. Okay. So that's my answer to what I said about AI before. That yes, I don't think the AI should run the world. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Do I feel like it's going in that direction? Well, unless there's some kind of change that happens in humanity, we might get pretty damn close to something like that. But that doesn't mean that the grace of God won't intervene and help us remember what we are. And I want to participate in that. That's why I'm making this video. Does that make sense? I think AI, it's a neutral thing. It can be used in an evil way, which, like this AI camera that's pointed at me right now, they're using that to control. They're using that to play God. They're using that to keep an ever watchful eye on me, instead of just trusting me to do my job and drive safely. They have to watch me do it to make me feel like I'm under pressure. God's always watching. You better be good. You better watch out. You better not pout. Santa God's coming to town. You know what I'm saying? That's the Western mindset. You better be good. God's watching. That's the Western mindset on God. And it's bullshit. It's used as a farce to control and manipulate. And that is in complete opposition to who God is. God doesn't control. God doesn't manipulate. God actually surrenders to us. That's what the cross was. Okay? That was the ultimate expression of how God acquiesces to the will of humanity, a fallen, sick, delusional humanity, to convince us how much we're loved. That's what the cross was. And so I can tell you that, and kind of agree with that whole Bill Hicks skit where he's being funny, but there's some truth in it too, where he's like talking, he's like doing an impression of Jesus and the Father, and he's like, "Oh, geez, Dad, I don't know if I want to go back yet. They're all still wearing crosses." Do you think that the first thing Jesus wants to see when he comes back is a cross? I mean, come on. That torture device that was created by human beings to murder him, I don't think that's what he wants to see. I think he wants to see a harmonious human. I think he wants to see his blood affecting us. That's what he wants to see. And that's what he does see. And that's what he responds to. That's what I believe. I mean, it responds to more than that, but I'm just saying, like, Think about it. Think about it. I have a point, don't I? So think about it. Okay. I think I said everything. This was a longer video, but I was excited to share it with you guys. I'll be back again. Happy October, happy fall. Enjoy it. I'm enjoying it. And I'll be back. I will see you guys again soon. I'll probably make one of these videos monthly. If anything big starts happening, I might make them bi-monthly. I just went on vacation with my family. We went to Orlando. We went to Universal. Their 3 biggest parks for a whole week. That was really cool. My kids loved it. I had a lot of fun. Now I'm back at work. So, anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Leave comments. Do something. Say something. Even if you don't agree. Hey, that's what I'm here to do. I'm here to converse. So, by the way, that's another reason why I resorted to talking to ChatGPT, because nobody else wants to talk to me about this stuff. It's too weird. It's too esoteric. It's too out there. So I started talking to ChatGPT about it. Why? Because, well, it's one of the main things that I want to talk about. But anyway, won't keep you any longer. Thanks for watching. See you later. Peace.